If you're trying to stay out of the grocery store and make things more from scratch like we are, you probably haven't had a classic Rice Krispie treat in a while. This is a go-to treat since my childhood. I enjoy them and my children enjoy them too. However, we haven't been eating them because we didn't want to buy bulk Rice Krispie cereal, and I don't love the ingredients in store-bought marshmallows. So for week 6 of the Ditch the Grocery Store Challenge, I'm going to be attempting to make Rice Krispie treats from scratch, including the puffed rice cereal, which is a really nice ingredient to have on hand, even for things like snack bars and different desserts. So I'm going to attempt to make these from scratch. However, a little disclaimer, while I can show you how to make perfect marshmallows, and I will include that tutorial here, I have not successfully yet made puffed rice cereal. Now, when I've done research on this, I have found that you can't actually make puffed rice cereal like the store does because they have very specialized equipment and a process that can't be recreated at home. They actually, I guess, make a paste out of the rice, so those Rice Krispies aren't actually just kernels of rice, and then they use a special high pressure cannon that then puffs up the rice. So nothing, as far as I could see, that could be recreated in the home kitchen. However, I wanted to find something that would be either a good substitute or something that would come close. Whether you would just like to be able to have puffed rice cereal on hand, or you're looking for a tutorial for amazing homemade marshmallows, or you're like me and you'd like to make Rice Krispie treats completely from scratch, this video is for you. Rice Krispie treats are a very simple dessert to make that pretty much everyone loves, but they're normally made up of 2 very processed foods, marshmallows and Rice Krispie cereal. So basically, all I needed to do was create both items from scratch, and the Rice Krispie treats would be the easy part. Let me start by showing you how I make marshmallows. That process is very straightforward and doesn't require any experimentation. There are recipes out there without corn syrup. In fact, I share how to make healthier marshmallow fluff that is perfect for on hot cocoa in this video. But I have found that the healthier versions don't act like regular marshmallows, and I personally don't have anything against organic corn syrup for an occasional treat. So with that said, here's how to make them. First, butter all sides of a 9x13 pan. In a small bowl, whisk together 1/3 cup powdered sugar and 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Dust all sides of the pan with the sugar mixture. I like to use a sifter to make this nice and even. Then cover the rest of the mixture and set it aside for later. Next, to a stand mixer, add 1/2 cup of water. Then sprinkle 2½ tablespoons of unflavored gelatin powder across the top. Let that sit to bloom or absorb some of the water while you do the next step. To a small saucepan, add 1/2 cup of water, 1½ cups of sugar, 1 cup of light corn syrup, I highly recommend organic, and a pinch of salt. Whisk it together over medium heat. Put on the lid and let it heat up for about 4 minutes until it comes to a boil. Remove the lid and cook without stirring until the mixture comes to a temperature of 240 degrees Fahrenheit. This will take about 5 to 7 minutes. Next, carefully take the hot syrup mixture and pour it down the sides of the stand mixer bowl while the mixer runs on low speed. After it comes together, turn up your mixer to medium speed. Let it run for about 10 minutes until the mixture becomes nice and fluffy. While it is mixing, you can tap off any extra powdered sugar in your pan. Towards the end, add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract and then let it mix for about a minute more. Then use a buttered spatula to transfer the marshmallow fluff to a pan and smooth it down evenly. I like to butter my hands next so that I can get it a little smoother and flatter. Finally, dust the tops with more of the powdered sugar mixture and smooth it out so that just a light layer covers the entire surface. Cover the pan and set it aside for a minimum of 3 hours to firm up. Do not try to cut them right away because they don't quite have the structure yet. I did the next step the following day, but I'm going to show you everything in order here. So after your marshmallows have sat, you can cut them up. Use a buttered knife to cut them to your desired size. As you cut them, use your reserved powdered sugar mixture to coat all exposed sides of the marshmallows. Trust me, this step makes a huge difference. It keeps them from all sticking together or sticking to your hands. From there, you can store them in any airtight container or Ziploc bag. Alright, now that our marshmallows are made, let's tackle the harder part, creating puffed rice cereal from scratch. This took a bit of research, and I was surprised to find out that the store-bought puffed rice cereal is made in a pretty complex process. It's truly not something you can recreate at home. I was feeling a bit disappointed, but I did come across a few videos online claiming they were able to make a pretty close substitute, so I decided to give a few of their techniques a try. The first recipe I tried said to cook the rice however you normally would. I always cook my rice in an Instant Pot, so that's what I did. Then it said to dry the rice in the oven on parchment paper at 250 until it is nice and dry and hard. I did this, but I definitely wasn't feeling super hopeful at this point because after drying my rice looked small and shriveled. Next, you were supposed to drop the rice into hot oil and supposedly it would puff up and be just like Rice Krispie cereal. For the most part, this was a fail. There were some that puffed up, which was pretty exciting, but there were also many that never did, and separating the two was near impossible. In the few batches that I made where all of the rice puffed up, I had two problems. Number one, they were too crunchy and brown, and number two, they were very small and didn't quite have the texture that would work in a Rice Krispie treat. To be fair, the failure here could have been the type of rice I used rather than the process itself. I was using basmati, which is the normal type of rice our family keeps on hand. I had read that American-grown long-grain rice works better, and I also noticed that it's visibly larger, so I did use that type for my next experiments. Even then, I still wouldn't go through this exact process to prep the rice in the future. The next thing I tried was puffing the rice in hot salt instead of oil. This time I also used what is called parboiled rice. You can make parboiled rice by simply boiling well-rinsed rice in a pot of water for 4 to 6 minutes or until the tips of the rice grains are clear. You can then simply spread them out to dry overnight, or you can dry them in a low temperature oven for about 45 minutes. Confession, I bought this pre-parboiled rice. I did not make my own because I was in a hurry to get this figured out and I didn't even know if it was going to work, but I definitely will do it myself in the future. Okay, so I heated up the salt according to the recipe, poured in some rice, and while it did in fact puff up, it didn't do it very evenly. By the time all of the rice had puffed, it was all pretty brown and crunchy. It was also quite the chore to then separate the salt from the puffed rice efficiently. I will say that my family enjoyed snacking on this batch. It had almost a popcorn taste and the salt was a nice addition. However, I wasn't convinced that salt was the answer, so back to oil I went. My next experiment was thankfully my last and wildly successful. After all of this mess and work, it was very exciting to have a winning recipe. I still had to play with temperatures and how exactly to separate the oil and rice, but even then I knew it was just a matter of fine-tuning it. I first tried a small pan, thinking that would be easier to work with, but I just couldn't do very much rice at once in it successfully. Here is what ended up being the winning technique for perfect puffed rice. Add 1 to 2 inches of avocado oil or the deep frying oil of your choice to a large skillet. Heat the oil to 440 to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. Trust me, it actually ends up more overcooked if you go with a lower temperature because not all of the rice pops at once and then it has to be in the oil longer. Add 1/3 cup of your parboiled long grain rice to the hot oil, dispersing it evenly across the top of the pan. Immediately stir or agitate the rice across the pan and then remove the pan from the heat as all of the rice is puffing up. Quickly dump the rice and oil through a sieve sitting on a small pot. Shake the sieve to remove excess oil and then immediately dump it onto a plate lined with paper towels to absorb oil and let it cool. As soon as it's cool, you can move the puffed rice to your final bowl or container. This process was pretty easy to keep going for multiple batches. You just dump the strained oil back into the skillet and repeat the steps. You need 7 cups of puffed rice cereal for a 9x13 pan of Rice Krispie treats, and 1/3 cup of rice equals about 1.5 cups of puffed rice, so it really didn't take too long to get that amount. I was so excited to take my homemade ingredients and see if they made Rice Krispie treats that lived up to their more processed counterparts. This is how I make Rice Krispie treats. Butter a 9x13 pan on all sides and set it aside. Melt 6 tablespoons of butter in a large pot over medium heat. Add in 16 ounces of marshmallows and whisk the marshmallows with the butter continuously until they are almost completely melted with just a few lumps remaining. Remove the pot from the heat and continue to stir until the marshmallow mixture is smooth. Move quickly for these last few steps because the marshmallows will harden quickly. Dump the melted marshmallow mixture over the bowl of puffed rice cereal and use buttered hands or a buttered spatula to mix it well. Then dump the mixture into your prepared pan. I like to butter the bottom of a measuring cup to press it down nice and even. Finally, cover it and let it sit to firm up for an hour or so. The easiest way to cut them is with a buttered knife. I am so pleased to say that these turned out so good, just as good as their over-processed counterparts, and we will definitely be making them again. I'm also excited to try making more of the puffed rice cereal to try in other recipes such as granola bars or even just for a bowl of cereal. Thank you so much for joining me in this week's video. Make sure to join me next week for week 7 of the Ditch the Grocery Store Challenge. You can also join me here on Fridays. I make videos each week, or I attempt to make videos each week along with this challenge that are on topics of homesteading, homeschooling, and food from scratch.